Welcome to the Inflection Podcast, where we explore the pivotal moments that have shaped us into who we are today. I am your host, Anabi, and I can't wait to dive into these moments with you. Let's get it.
Well, thank you, Sean, for coming on board the Inflection Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Yes, thanks for having me.
It's funny, many podcasts start with the pleasantries and we tell each other, thank you, blah, 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 but let's get right into it. One of the things that stood out to me when we met I think last year or so, was just your manner and your presence. It was very inspiring. We were at an event together. You were on the panel. I helped the guy that interviewed you guys on that panel, and that was a lot of fun. But I really enjoyed the conversation. I was like, I like this guy. I'd like to collaborate on more. And that's something I want to dive into a little bit more. Like, how do you get to be that trusted guy that people meet that want to work with you, right? I know when we talked, 2 weeks ago, we talked about it a little bit more. And hey, I just want you to peel back the curtains a little bit. Like, what does that look like?
Sure.
Broad question.
It is. And you're going to force me to talk about myself right away. But
sorry.
That's okay. No, I appreciate it. I'll take that as a compliment. I think you're meaning it as a compliment.
It is a compliment.
I'll take it. Yeah. I've heard it from a few folks over the years, just that my presence can be warm, comforting, both in a social environment and a professional environment. And I've taken that into consideration in both how I interact with people professionally and personally, and try to be intentional about it. Because I think that it matters when you're with people that they just feel comfortable so that they can open up and discuss the topics. You want them to be honest. You want them to feel that they can tell you how they're thinking, how they're feeling. In a professional setting, it's really important that if you're conducting business with someone, that you're really talking about the honest truth about how you can help them with business. If you're talking to them about personal matters, it's even more so.
Yeah.
So I think it's just been very important to me to be my authentic self in that particular moment, especially when I'm speaking to an audience. When we first met, it helps for me to be comfortable if I can be my authentic self in that way. So it's important for me to resonate with the audience by being as warm as I can be, by toning myself in that, having my tone be that way, which just feels more comfortable to me.
Yeah.
It's why I like panel discussions more than anything. You take the intimidation of a presentation out of it, right? And you get to have a real conversation. I thrive in the conversational moments more than anything. It allows me to be me.
And here we are.
Yeah. So
I really appreciate you saying that. I know one of the things too that I particularly enjoyed and resonated with in a culture of hustle, grind, 80-hour work weeks. And it's so fun to say, I'm so busy, I'm doing 80 hours here. And they're like, oh, wow, that's awesome. You're grinding. It's very refreshing to meet people like you. Still a high performer, you've worked at a variety of companies, leadership roles, and built massive teams at those companies. But still, when I talk with you, you say things like, oh, I'm prioritizing family, right? I don't want my work to be at the detriment of family. And that's very refreshing. I have a young daughter, thinking a lot more about that. I've not always been good at balance that way. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how did you get to that point? Or maybe you've always been like that, I don't know. But how did you get to the point where you try to balance that out and still do a great job, but also keep your family the main thing in your life?
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of us have learned from failure in this space.
Yeah.
We've had to learn the hard way to enforce work-life balance. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I've learned to value so much more in the last 3 years. Of course, I valued my wife, but my wife is very much a work hard mentality person too. So we didn't have this competition as much for the work-life balance because we both very much achieved a lot at work, and we both were okay with investing our time into our work because we both had a very career-minded mentality. But when our daughter came along, it really put everything into perspective. And that first year, I think, was really where I failed hard and learned a lot in terms of the work-life balance that I had to instill. And it's been resonating with me a lot when I meet people now who do a great job of that work-life balance.
Yeah.
And then you meet the people who do the opposite spectrum of that. And you evaluate, if you're really observant of people's nature, and you could evaluate their stress levels, you can evaluate their happiness. You just become a very observant person of the nature of people, and you can just tell the difference.
Yeah.
This person works hard, they talk about their success, they talk about work, but don't talk about is their family and their happiness, what their kids bring to them. They don't talk about the meaning of life and things. That they talk about their work all the time because it's the only thing they embrace anymore. And it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't bring joy to them. And you can tell that. And I just find that they're not willing to admit that very often. So it took a lot of learning for me to get to that point. But that's where I am now. And for me, it's just very important right now.
Yeah.
So I want to work hard. I'm just finding more efficient ways to do it.
Yeah.
I'm packing a lot into tighter timelines. I'm making sure that the reservation of time and space is uniquely put into the agreement that my wife and my child and I have made, that this is for us and this is for our profession.
Yeah.
And it stays that way. We have to do that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. You used an interesting word choice, because when you were saying all of that, I was thinking about joy and how joy, I think I read this somewhere, joy is almost like a state of being. Like you meet people who are genuinely joyful. And then there's happiness, which can be more ephemeral, happy and sad tomorrow, but like you can be sad, but like it's an attitude of joyfulness that lasts a long time. So I think that's interesting you use that word joy there.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I actually get a lot of joy from work.
Yeah.
Like there's
That's
a
fair.
lot of great people to work with, and there's a lot of great experiences at work. So you can extract joy from a lot of professional experiences as well.
Yeah.
But I think where you're really to draw a line is where you choose to exchange the type of joy. You choose to allow the joy to come from your child or your wife, or the joy to come from your profession. Because you'll find it from wherever,
Yeah.
but you have to choose where it comes from and make sure you're balancing that.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me think of something, again, something I read or saw a video, right, where the Netflix CEO is saying, if a company tells you, oh, you're family run, and it's very interesting because, yes, I really enjoy working. I enjoy a lot of the jobs I've had, but you also can't let that replace the main things or assume that, oh, this will always be here, because usually it's at will employment. In a heartbeat, this thing that was your joy and pride and your life can be taken away from you. Now, I think relationships are hard. I mean, yes, you could lose family members and whatnot, but generally it's more tangible than a job, which, again, in the grand scheme of things, is a lot more transient and ephemeral. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot more lately, especially after having a daughter. The concept of time just has a lot more weight. We also talked about this, because when you're thinking and evaluating what activities to go to, networking, meeting people, you're thinking the opportunity cost. If I'm going to miss my daughter's bedtime or dinner with my wife and daughter, then it's like, this better be really worth it. So it just changes the lens through which you parse things, I feel like, with regards to time.
Yeah, I mean, and we've all heard it's the one thing you can't purchase, right? It's the one thing you can't exchange for money. But, I personally think that we can extend the amount of time that we have if we just choose to exchange that for the things that matter to us. And what I mean by that is, if I wake up and I say, what is the exchange cost of taking 30 more minutes to walk down the street with my daughter, for instance,
Yeah.
or start working on that deliverable for my client 30 minutes earlier, what is the trade-off for that? Does it mean that I need to really slam out that deliverable later this morning? What's the exchange for that? Is that 30 minutes with my daughter more valuable to me? Most likely, right?
Yeah.
Can I still slam out that deliverable for my client? Absolutely. So if that puts your business at risk to make that exchange, then you just have to take that into perspective and you have to do that. There's always delegation too.
Yeah.
If you're a business owner, figure that out. If you were the one responsible for it, delegate it out. Spend that time with your daughter. Delegate that task to someone else to get it done.
Do you find yourself being a good delegator, or is that something
I wasn't. I've become a better delegator over the last several years, but it was a hard failure and learn situation. I have achieved a great amount of stress in my past learning how to be a good delegator. I will say, if there was a crash course on delegation that every executive should take, like 100% every executive should learn that as the primary skill to obtain.
Hey, if there's someone listening, please, you have an idea for that? Make that course.
Certification 101, delegation to be an executive.
Because a lot of high performers I know struggle with that, right? Especially if you're anal or A-type personality, you're like, oh, I can get it done better than anyone else, so I'll just do it. And then you end up piling more and more on your plate. Plate is full, but you're just piling on more, and then you burn out. That's something I have found out of necessity, and after burning out, I'm still working on it, but learning to delegate more and figuring out who to bring on who can really run with that. It's their zone of genius, delegate it to them. They're happy to do it. They can do it. They'll do a great job. And trusting them, which brings me to the next thing, trust. There's a book by, I think, Stephen Covey, The Speed of Trust. Really great book, but think about the concept of trusting people and being able to trust them. They are great leaders. Command, control, get it done. Maybe they delegate, but they're breathing down your necks. And then you have really great leaders that bring on a team, equip them. I think Steve Jobs famously said he hires smart people and he gets out of the way. I don't know if he really did that in reality or if that was just nice to say, but I've seen like really great leaders operate that way. They bring you on, they equip you to support, but they trust ultimately that you will get it done. And I think the flip there between just a boss, could be a tyrant, and a great leader is that trust factor, where it's like, I trust that you can get it done and you will get it done. Prove me right. And then there's I don't trust that you can get it done. Prove me wrong. So you're always trying to do this thing of proving them wrong, and that's just not good on both ends for everyone. So that's a lot of setting the stage. I perceive from conversations with you that you're trustworthy and you figured out a way to bring in people you can trust and who can trust you. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think trust is got to be the backbone of a lot of relationships, both in professional and personal settings. But professional, I would hang my entire career as a leader on the concept of trust. I categorize myself as an empathetic leader, really trying to understand people's motivation, trying to understand the nature of people's kind of operative working styles and figuring out what kind of support they need to do the jobs. But you can't have a relationship with an employee or your fellow leadership team members without trust. And how do you develop trust? Well, you do it with spending time with them. You do it with understanding their approach, understanding their perspective. You do it by showing and demonstrating your willingness to participate. You don't do it by commanding. You don't do it by issuing orders and walking out of the room.
Here's a decree.
Right. And so a lot of my trust is built. For instance, if I'm going to trust someone else, the simplest form that I gain trust from someone else is their ability to ask me questions. When I issue a request or I ask for collaboration on something, somebody's ability to ask me questions and engage me back in what I'm asking for or asking them to collaborate on demonstrates to me their interest, their understanding, and their willingness. To me, that's a preface or even kind of just the start of a relationship with someone, is that demonstration of those activities. When it comes to me trying to build trust with someone else, I want to gain the trust of someone else.
Yeah.
I have zero problem doing everything in my power to show them that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish the need that they have, whether it's no cost to them.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean financially, but I mean at the expense of their time, their energy. If I can do something on someone else's behalf to gain their trust, let me lift that up for you. Let me go drive and get that for you. Let me obtain that thing for you. Because I want your trust. I want you to believe. I want you to come to me as a trusted advisor, as a trusted participant, as a trusted servant, whatever position I'm taking with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you. I'm not going to just tell you. I'm going to show you that you can trust me. I'm going to work for you for whatever period of time to demonstrate my trust. Because I can tell you all day long that I can do this, but you're not going to believe until I show you.
Yeah.
And that's how I approached a lot of gaining my leadership positions in my career, was by just doing the job itself until someone was issue me the job. So that's how a lot of the times I approach gaining trust.
I really like that. Thank you. Perfect segue into, you were most recently head of growth and quality at Vincit. Now you're stepping out, consulting and working with a variety of companies. But what exactly is the head of growth and quality? Like, because those are two different things juxtaposed together. Quality and growth. Like, what does that look like? And then we can also talk, just teasing a little bit more of some of your focuses and the new thing for those listening and who might want to engage there.
Yeah. The role of quality and growth that I participated in at Vincit was really focused on helping the company expand, particularly in this case, in the United States market. So Vincit was a custom software design and development company based out of Europe, specifically in Finland, with other locations in Poland and Sweden, Portugal, and in the US. So I was part of the US leadership team, and my growth role and quality role was really focused on a variety of things to help scale the operations in the US. It included participating in how we approached our sales, how we geographically expanded. We were in Irvine, California, and Orange County. We helped move out here into the Arizona market. We also looked for other locations. So I led a lot of the initiatives to expand geographically, looking at how we expanded some of our service operations and our customer service, specifically around our customer service and account management, and how we deal with our deliveries of our service to ensure that our customer satisfaction was always intact and highest priority. The quality was just really making sure that in our delivery practice, we kept everything in mind to ensure that the T's were crossed, the I's were dotted, and really just making sure that as we were scaling, as we were growing as a company in the US, that when you go from a smaller business area of a larger company, we could make sure operations and processes were scaling with that. So, but it's in any company, you're typically wearing multiple hats.
You wear a variety of hats at Vincit, even other companies, and you've had a lot of hats over the years. That was another question I was going to ask you, like, what does that look like to morph and pick up different skills along your roles?
I think that's honestly the passionate part for me is to be a little chameleon-like. I think where I am now taking a leap into entrepreneurship for the reason that I do like wearing multiple hats. I like looking at the business from every perspective. I really like to understand everything from every angle, and that just makes sense for me as I'm endeavoring into my own business ownership now, to just see it from every perspective, including the customer's view, including the owner's view, the employee's view, and really just take it from a holistic view of saying, how does a business grow? How does it thrive? How does it pay for its services? How does it charge for things? How do you deliver creative services? How do you deliver products? How do you expand into markets? How does one just thrive or survive in this economic insanity that we call our US market right now? And I just want to understand that thoroughly more than I have been in my previous roles, but now doing it for myself. But I love it. I love the multiple hat wearing. I love the idea of just one day waking up and today you're the CFO, tomorrow you're the CEO, the next day after that you're the janitor cleaning up the floor. When you're running your own business, I think it just gives you the challenge of really making sure that you're seeing everything from every angle. And I think that's imperative, especially from the customer's view, to just see everything and all the colors that come of the way that the world represents your product and service, that you can wear all those hats and ensure that your product or service is represented holistically that way.
Now, I really like it when you say that from a perspective of the customer, right, who you're serving. I was at a Qualtrics conference some weeks ago. I spoke in a panel. We both love panels. I love moderating them and being in them. And while I was there, one of the speakers was from Porsche in Germany. He flew in from Germany to deliver this talk. And it was very interesting because one of the metrics, I think it's the CMO of Porsche, one of the metrics he talked about that they track is not just customer satisfaction, but customer excitement. And I thought that was very interesting. And so they ask surveys, mass surveys to their customers after they serve them. Was this below your expectation? Did this meet your expectation? Exceed your expectation? Are you excited about this experience? And that's what they try to optimize for always. So it's not just enough to meet expectation. They're trying to go for the exceed expectation. And I began to think, like, how might this apply to other things, the businesses I run, or even my job with the state, meeting our constituents' needs from a digital perspective. But I thought that was a very interesting metric. Never really thought about that before. I know about customer centricity, I know about customer experience and but like the optimizing for exceed expectation, I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I think Porsche's been one that has always looked at sentiment or experience as a true measure of success in their delivery. And there's a few others, of course. I think Apple has always been about true experience as well, even though they get painted in a lot of different lights. But at the end of the day, it's the experience of the ecosystem they put you in that we all measure Apple's products by. When we talk about things like AI and whether it is eventually going to be able to measure sentiment in a way that's real, human emotional, Qualtrics obviously is kind of a big player in terms of measuring sentiment, but it still requires a human's desire to engage with, for instance, a survey, to engage with the input so that it can provide the output of sentiment analysis. When we actually start realizing that if we can use observational sentiment analysis.
Yeah, and I think that's coming. Right. Qualtrics, I think one of the announcements at the summit was AI-driven analysis, observing users, looking at videos, facial expressions, how people talk.
Body language, eye movement.
It's all of that. I don't know if Qualtrics will bake all of that into their model, but I think that's probably happening already. Now, for it to be happening at scale, yet to see. It makes me think about AI, right? And where AI is at. ChatGPT has the new model, the 4.0, and talking about utilizing that. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity to utilize AI. So you meet maybe 3 people, those who are like, no, AI is going to take all our jobs, it's going to suck. The ones that are indifferent towards it, couldn't care less, and those who are super excited about it, where they're like, oh, it's going to solve all the world's problems. And it's not really any of these, right? I don't think it's going to just be a silver bullet to solve all the world's problems, like a sentiment analysis, make you tweak your product, like silver bullet to cure all ills. But I also don't think it's going to take away everyone's jobs. I see it more like an enhancement. Those who are already good players in the game, if good employees or companies already doing good work that people love, like it could even supercharge that better. Right? For personal productivity, I see it as if you're already struggling with productivity, AI is not just going to automatically make you more productive. It's going to help those who are already productive to be more productive. If you think about script writing and things like that, I see it as maybe you have a first draft and it gets you to turn it some more, or it helps give you ideas. So just curious to chat about from your perspective and with the many companies you've worked at in leadership positions, where are you on the AI spectrum? Another broad question out there.
I will not claim to be an AI expert by any means, but I've been on a few podcasts and a few panels where we're talking about AI. So I'll kind of just speak from my experience. And my limited observation is simply that the companies that were already extremely behind in their evolution or their modernization of their operational practices are replacing jobs with AI tools. But that's simply because they were not evolving themselves to a modern state already. They weren't picking up subtle nuances of machine learning steps or chatbots or things that they could have been doing in the last 10 years. So yes, they chose to finally now modernize because these large companies made these models and they made it more cost efficient to now just slice off 1,000 employees and replace it with a model. But those are the edge cases and they're not happening. So I think there is job loss, but it is such a small section of the industry and people are looking at it as if it's a common practice. But I think the companies that have done the appropriate amount of modernization at a normal pace over the last 10 years are not seeing it that way. They're actually seeing it as the gain. They're seeing it as the productivity gains, the efficiency gains. They're looking at their employees and saying, how can you use these tools to increase your output or your productivity or your creativity? How can I help you be a happier employee? How can I help you be a more productive employee? How can I reduce the amount of stress you're feeling by giving you tools to accomplish the tasks that are already on your plate? Depending on your employer and their sympathy to you, they're either asking you to do more work with the tools, or they're asking to reduce the amount of work you do by giving you tools, right? You could have a really great employer who's actually saying, I want to make your job easier, and just leaving it at that. But there are, of course, the rest of the employers who are just saying,
I want more productivity.
I want more productivity.
So that's interesting.
My opinion is simply that there is a little bit of all types of situations happening with these AI tools. But broadly, my expectation is that we're going to see a lot of improvement of the way of working through these tool usage, but that the controls and the constructs of these systems and tools that AI is being produced in is still very a controlled environment, that methods in which they're being released are not going to wildly get out of control in the next couple of years so that people are going to mass layoffs or wildly change the nature of people's working habits to the point of obsolescence of employment. This is my personal feeling. I think it's forcing industries to just modernize. And then we're going to plateau at some level of modernization. And then we're going to get right back to where we just have to start innovating again. That's my opinion. I think it's forced modernization. And then we'll hit the space again where someone's going to have to come up with something really cool again. It's going to it's cyclical. It's just going to happen again. And I think we're just right in that really interesting space where the AI is introducing that new thing that's giving general modern society something that a broader audience, people who are very educated all the way down to people with limited education, actually can take advantage, where it's not just being released to the master's degree students who understand it. Anybody coming out of elementary school can now take advantage of very limited AI tools and actually start to use it for their elementary school usage. And it's going to improve as they move through the education system.
And it's opening up room for different kinds of jobs one may not have thought about. I mean, I'm seeing job listings now for prompt engineer. No degree required. Just, do you know how to leverage AI tools and ask good questions?
My hope, and I've had a few discussions on this from people that are actually in the industries, is that AI will start leaning back into the skilled labor workforce to provide the modernization that has been absolutely necessary and super deficient in that space for so long, to reinvigorate the labor workforce that we need very badly, at least in the US market, if not beyond, to fulfill that workforce that we need. The skilled labor that we're so deficient in, I mean, it's just absurdly deficient in. Basic electricians and woodworkers and all these things that we need. We still have to build infrastructure. We still have to build physical products, and who's going to do all that stuff if we're all out there getting computer science degrees?
Yeah, you make a good point. Something we've been talking about and that I'm hearing a lot more chatter about is the jobs. A lot of boomers are retiring, right? And it's opening opportunities where they're either going to sell their business or just close it down because maybe they don't have someone who's going to take over. And it's a massive opportunity there. Like the boring stuff, right? Compared to computer work, skilled labor, the laundromats and other kinds of creative businesses out there, creative being just stuff tech folks would not think about doing. I'm having more conversations around that. And I think there's massive opportunity there for folks just stepping, not necessarily to run it, but to buy this business, add a layer of modernization to the infrastructure. Maybe it's even just scheduling more effectively than just text, right? Or adding software to run operations more efficiently and things like that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm very curious about that space. The Cody Sanchez's of the world and folks are calling it boring businesses, but I think when you get into the soup and nuts of it, it's actually not so boring.
Yeah, well, I think if anybody's labeling it boring, it's because they're not thinking outside the box. If someone thinks about adding technology layer to anything, you can very much create some excitement to it, especially if you think about, for instance, the AR and VR layer to any of the skilled labor workforce. If you can train employees using AR and VR, I mean, they've been doing it forever in the flight simulator space of training people how to fly, right? I mean, a lot of pilots learned how to fly through flight simulators.
Yeah.
Why not train through schooling using a lot of that simulation in very skilled labor type jobs? Let's add technology to some of the things that have been categorized as boring, and I guarantee there's going to be a lot more interest in it if we can just make it more sexy.
Yeah.
But someone has to have the energy, the passion to bring that to the table.
Yeah.
It could be you.
And you.
Well, let's do it. Let's just do it together. Why not?
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sean. Been a pleasure. I look forward to doing more of these as you develop your new venture. And hopefully next time we get you on, you've been doing it for a while and we can talk about learning so far or something like that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun today.
Awesome. Thanks, man.